All right, power rankings, week 0. We have not started this season yet, but these are my power rankings. These are a little bit updated from the podcast. So if you've been paying attention to the podcast, you might be wondering, wait a second, I thought that team was there, but now it's here. I've done a couple of changes. You'll see the changes. There's asterisks next to them, so be on the lookout for that, including fixing just a typo I had on the Cleveland Browns in my podcast. So that stuff, a couple things like that I have fixed. But these are going to be my power rankings. It's using the algorithm, the almighty algorithm. If you remember last year, what I did always, but a little bit different simply because I'm giving my predictions as to where I think each team will rank in each position grouping, and obviously that's difficult to predict entirely, so there might be some misses there, but then there's a win total equated to each of that stuff. You'll understand how it works. Let's just jump into it. All right, so let's start off with the bottom 8 here. So you're going to see where I have, how many wins I have them getting for each position group. You also see the chart of just, knowing where that ranks up, so knowing what your tier is. So for example, for the, for the Bears, offensive line with a 0, that is a tier 5, obviously. The Bears, not a ton to like about this team altogether. Justin Fields is getting the majority of this wins. I do not have the Bears. I'm not too high hopes on the Bears here. The Texans also, I am not part of the Mills Mafia. I have him as a tier 5 quarterback right now. Maybe he can improve. We'll see. Some stuff to like in their coverage, some stuff to like in their offensive line, but as a whole, these to me feel like the clear-cut 2 worst teams in football. We get 2 teams that are, at least competent, I would say, with the Giants, who, Daniel Jones is okay. He's not great. He's okay. They have some help in the run defense game. Their offensive line is improving. They're in a rebuilding situation. The Panthers, I feel like, are also in a rebuilding situation. I don't know if they feel that way. Maybe Baker Mayfield is worth more than 0 wins. You could certainly argue that one, I think. And there is stuff to like on their defense. And, Matt Rule getting a negative 0.65 wins is maybe a bit harsh because I don't think he's been horrible. It's just more been a situational thing, but still, that's where he ends up. The Seattle Seahawks, they can stop the run well. They have good wide receivers, and that's pretty much it. So this is where they're at. The Jacksonville Jaguars, who, again, there's stuff to like about this team. We'll see what Trevor Lawrence can do. Maybe he can improve above tier 4 status. For now, that's where he's at. But their coverage is definitely, solid. I think they have some stuff in the run defense. And who knows, if Trayvon Walker can take a step forward already as a rookie, maybe that pass rush will look better than, I believe that's tier 5 or tier 4. Either way, 0 wins. The Lions love their offensive line. Like some of their receivers, Jared Goff is okay. Still don't love this defense too much outside of some pass rush scenarios. So there should be some good stuff there in the pass rush. And again, if Hutchinson comes in and steps up right away, which I think he actually will, maybe it could be even better than that. But as a whole, again, they're in a deep rebuild. They know they're in a deep rebuild. I think that's okay. The Falcons finally to round out the bottom tier teams. You have, again, stuff to like here, but if you don't have much at the quarterback position, you're not going to be fantastic. They do have some stuff in the coverage unit, though, and that should help out their defense. Adding, I think, Casey Hayward should work, and you still have, a decent offensive line, decent wide receivers, all that stuff. All right, and next tier, the Dallas Cowboys make it at 24. Really what it comes down to, I think, what I disagree with is the coverage. What I disagree with compared to what other people disagree with. It's my list. I don't disagree with the list. I disagree with what other people would say. I have some questions about Trayvon Diggs. I do. And typically with that kind of player, the guy who gets a lot of interceptions but also gives up a lot of yards, I typically just have a bias where I bet against that guy instead of bet on that guy. But that doesn't mean that they always don't work out. Like, again, Marcus Peters is someone I brought up as an example of, what he could potentially be. And if that works out, they'll probably be better than what I have them at. But I still don't have them as a playoff team. The Cardinals, another team where it's like their coverage unit kind of like was patched together last year and worked for a point, but then really kind of fell off towards the end of the year. And I'm concerned about that. That's a really important aspect of football. Also don't love their offensive line. And, the DeAndre Hopkins suspension will hurt them. So while I like Kyler a lot, I still like their receiving core a good deal. They have some stuff in the run defense game. It's just, I don't know. There's some issues here for me. The Steelers love Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is, maybe the best thing about this team. Maybe maybe my scale is broken and only giving him 0.75 wins, which is the second most you can get, isn't enough for someone like Tomlin. Got a good kicking situation, good defense, although I would like their coverage unit to be better. Just not a ton of talent on this offense, but who knows? If Kenny Pickett comes in and plays decent right away, this could easily be a 500 team. I don't think that's crazy to say. I actually think the Steelers might be better this year than they were last year. I think they got a little lucky last year in making the playoffs. The Broncos at 21. I know a lot of Broncos fans will be disappointed, but to me, there's a lack of things that they're great at. I've talked about their coverage and how I think it's kind of overrated. I think their receiving core is probably overrated as well. And there's just a lot of stuff that's like decent. It's not bad. And listen, having a decent team with a great quarterback, that can certainly win you a lot of games. I just don't know if it'll win them enough to get into the playoffs. The Titans here at 20, another team where, Titans, fans just disagree with me on. They don't like that I have their pass rush low. That's fine. Okay. That's not changing. That's not moving the needle either way. Even if their pass rush was tier 1, I don't have them as a playoff team because I don't love their receiving core. I was not a huge Treylon Burks fan coming out of college. I've been wrong about a million receivers because everyone's been wrong about a million receivers except for the Steelers, right? The Steelers are the one team that has it figured out. Other than that, it's just a difficult position to predict, but I don't love that style of player. I think that's difficult. I think A.J. Brown did a lot more stuff than Treylon Burks will be able to do, but maybe I'll be wrong. The Chargers here at 18 now. So, again, love Justin Herbert. I wish they had a third receiver. I do. I think that hurts them, and they're losing some value there. I also wish they had a second corner. I don't know how much I trust Asante Samuel Jr., and so I like their scheme. I like their coach a lot, but I just don't know how much I trust some of the important aspects of football. But, again, stuff to like as well. Good offensive line, good run defense, or not good run defense, good pass rush. Run defense better than last year. Hard to be a lot worse. I have the Jets here at 18. I have the Jets as I think the Jets will be decent this year. We have a team that, good coverage unit. I think that, again, I'm expecting Sauce Gardner to come in right away and play well. That's a big risk given he's a rookie, but, I really liked him out of college. So that's kind of why I'm having that happen, why I'm predicting that to happen. Good offensive line, decent receiving core. Hopefully Zach Wilson takes a next step, and if he does, maybe this team could find themselves in the playoffs. It's not out of the question. The Vikings here with, like Kirk Cousins, he's a tier 2 quarterback. I think he's underrated. He was really good last year. Like the receiving core a lot. Again, would like to see them add a better third receiver than the options they have. Not they have nobody, but I would just like to see them have an actively good wide receiver, but it's still a very good receiving core. I have it as tier 2. Coverage unit, again, it's a little bit concerning, just in that we're relying on either, Andrew Booth or Patrick Peterson to really step up. That's just a concern, and first-year head coach. But still, I have them as a above 500 team. In fact, I have the Vikings as the best NFC team not making the playoffs. So there you go. Only about a win and a half away from making the playoffs in my book. Next 8, and you're going to see some things next to the teams now in their rankings. So just to explain what the key is here, the @ symbol means that you win your division. The dash means that you are a wild card team. So that's what those symbols mean. So a couple of teams that I do not have making the playoffs on this list. The Raiders are a team that I do not have making the playoffs, but they're very close. Another team that could find a way to squeak in there. I have concerns about their offensive line. I have some concerns about losing Casey Hayward. That's kind of my biggest things. And their interior defensive line, I have some concerns about. Really like Derek Carr, and the reality is Carr is probably closer to a tier 2 quarterback than a tier 3 quarterback, but there's just only so many slots, and there's so many great quarterbacks. He fell to tier 3, but I've always been very pro Derek Carr, and I remember defending him. I don't know. I guess since I started this YouTube channel, which was 3 years ago, so maybe longer, a while ago. Feels like a while. So I like Derek Carr a lot, and if maybe with him actually playing with a decent receiving core for once in his life, he'll easily look like a tier 2 or tier 1 quarterback, and they'll be a playoff team. The Balls, aka the Washington football team, you have, plenty to like about this team. Listen, Carson Wentz is not a bad quarterback. He's not the best quarterback in the world, but he's not a bad quarterback. You have a decent, I think, a good receiving core and a good offensive line. You have really a lot of stuff to like here with the coverage unit. I think should be fine, and if William Jackson can take a step forward, it could be great. Really good run defense. I think their pass rush is a bit overrated, but there's still guys to like there. So I have them winning over 10 games. I have them making the playoffs. I don't know what their ceiling is necessarily, but I do think that this is a very good team. Now, the Browns at 14, there's an asterisk next to one of their things. I actually have 2 asterisks in here, which are things that I just sort of manually went in and said, you know what, gotta fix this. Certainly, because for the quarterback position, I have Jacoby Brissett as a tier 5 quarterback, but I have Watson as a tier 1 quarterback. So Watson will play 7 games. So I kind of just did the math and figured out what that would be worth. It's 1.41 wins. So that is what I am giving them. And so because of that, even with a tier 1 coverage unit, a tier 1 run defense, not tier 1 run defense, tier 1 run offense, tier 1 offensive line, there's some questions. I think the run defense, especially like the interior, could use a little bit of work. I think the receiving core could use a little bit of work, even though I like Amari Cooper. But I have them as 11.09 wins. With the Deshaun Watson suspension, I have them missing the playoffs barely. They're not too far away. I still have them winning 11 games. So there you go. The Eagles here I have as a team where they are, I think there's a lot to like about them. Again, there is the Jalen Hurts question. How good is he? That's a fair question to ask, but plenty to like about this team. Their offensive and defensive lines are fantastic. Adding A.J. Brown should help them a ton. And I think the question is with the, how good of a James Bradbury season are we getting? Him and Slay at their best could be fantastic, but they're not getting any younger. So just some questions. For the 49ers, again, what kind of Trey Lance season are we going to see? That probably is what it comes down to. Love their receiving core. Really like their defense as well. Like their head coach a lot. It's just the Trey Lance question. All comes down to the quarterback sometimes. Where it doesn't all come down to the quarterback is the Kansas City Chiefs, who I have winning their division and being the 7th team in the AFC. So I am lower on the Chiefs than I think most people are. And kind of interesting where I have the 2 teams that lost in the conference championship, not even as top 10 teams. But again, the 49ers, it's just a quarterback question. For the Chiefs, to me, can Patrick Mahomes carry all of this? I think their receiving core is underrated. I like their offensive line a lot as well. But there are some questions. I still think this Chiefs team is good. The coverage, there's some concerns there. It's tier 3. So there's stuff I like about this Chiefs team. But I do feel like Mahomes is going to have to carry a lot more. But I would also say Mahomes is probably adding more value than your traditional, just average tier 1 quarterback does. So maybe they get more value there. The Saints, I do have as a top 10 football team. Love their defense. I have their defense as the 2nd best in football, so that's a big part of it. I think Jameis Winston's solid. I think their receiving core has the potential to be great. I think their running game is great, and their offensive line should be at least good. So people are sleeping on the Saints, I think. I think the Saints are very good. And then the Bills at number 9. I think their passing attack could be a little better. I wish they had maybe some more high-end talent at the receiving position, personally. Stephon Diggs is great, but like Gabriel Davis has had some great moments. Maybe we give him more playing time. He looks fantastic, or maybe he doesn't. Those are, both options. Like their coverage unit a lot, though. I think this should be a very good team, but I don't have them as like a top couple, 2 or 3 team the way some other people do. I just don't. All right, top 8 here. So we have 6 division winners, 2 wildcard teams. The first wildcard team is the Miami Dolphins, who, yes, I have the Miami Dolphins as a top 8 team here. In fact, I have 3 teams from, and potentially even 4 teams couldn't make the playoffs in that division because I said the Jets have a chance. So Jets are still a little bit away, in my opinion, but I think the other 3 teams, I'm predicting them to make the playoffs. Listen, Tyreek Hill is going to mean a ton to this football team. Tyreek Hill is, in my opinion, the best receiver in football, and we just saw Tua hit him on a deep shot. Tyreek Hill is going to help this football team out a lot. I like Tua. I do. I don't love Tua. That's, the reality of the situation. I think he's a fine tier 3 quarterback. That's how I view him, and I think that that's all this Dolphins team needs right now because they have an elite coverage unit. They're built the right way, which is from the outsides in, that's how you win football games in today's NFL. There's a lot of data to back that up. They're not a perfect team, but I think that they've improved on the areas they've had to improve on, specifically the offensive line. So I had them here as not the best team in football, but I have them only a tenth of a win behind the team I have winning their division, the New England Patriots, who I think they'll patch together this coverage that people are freaking out about. It's Bill Belichick. When has he been wrong about coverage? Like, never. So I'm going to trust him on that one. Plenty to like about this offense. Again, I have Mac Jones as a tier 3 quarterback as well, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if he plays like a tier 2 quarterback next year. Like their offensive line, like their receiving core, really like their running game. And again, kind of a team that just seemingly does everything well, but has a couple of things that they're great at, which is, that's how you can win in today's NFL. The Colts, another team where, again, if you have good coverage, you're probably going to get high up on this list. I had them as a tier 1 coverage unit, so that's going to win you some football games. They also have Jonathan Taylor. That helps out a lot. Matt Ryan should at least be able to do solid. The offensive line is good. Another kind of team where they have no real weaknesses. Even though I have them as a, 0 wins for the pass rush, their pass rush should be solid as well. There's just a lot of good pass rushes, so that's why they were tier 4. The Ravens are another team that I have an asterisk on, which is their running game I did not have as tier 1 because I only evaluate the running back room, but I'm turning it to tier 1 because of what Lamar Jackson brings. And maybe you could argue I should do this for like the Cardinals as well, but I didn't bother with that because that's not really moving the needle at all. They're not a team making the playoffs, so who cares? That's kind of how, as in they're not a team I have making the playoffs. They could make the playoffs, but just not a team I have making it. The Ravens, I think that it makes a difference because this moved them up from, a fringe top 10 team. I think they barely made the top 10 to now a top 5 team, and maybe only making it a regular tier 1 running offense isn't enough because their running offense is just so much better than that. But then again, their passing offense isn't quite as good, but I still give value to Lamar Jackson. They're always a hard team to figure out how I put in this algorithm, but I have tier 2 quarterback with Lamar plus tier 1 run offense and tier 1 coverage. That's going to get you a lot of wins there. So, there you go. The Rams, who I have Matt Stafford as tier 3. I know, how could I do it? He's clearly the best quarterback in football. No, people aren't saying that necessarily, but I think a lot of people would have him at tier 2. I wouldn't fight you on it. Tier 2 is fine for me. I have him as I currently have him as tier 3, but if you have him as tier 2, well then he would jump the Cincinnati Bengals. But the way I have them currently set up, very good receiving core, certainly. I think that the Darius Williams losing him in free agency, that's a question mark that I do have. But you have Aaron Donald, who's going to help you out a ton in not just the pass rush, but also the run defense game. They're a loaded team. They won the Super Bowl last year. They lost Von Miller. That'll hurt them a little bit, but I still have them as a tier 1 pass rush. So how much will it hurt them? Probably not too much. They should still be good. I think losing Odell maybe hurts them more, but they added Allen Robinson, who could be great for them. So Rams are great. We all know that. They're a Super Bowl contender to me, clearly. The Bengals are also a clear Super Bowl contender. They were, 2 minutes away from winning it last year. Tier 1 quarterback. I love Joe Burrow. I think he's great. I will, go to bat with Joe Burrow consistently. Love their receiving core as well. It's the best receiving core in football, in my opinion. You also have, again, relying on Eli Apple a bit too much. That's kind of the one question I have about this team. And I'm also surprised about, their offensive line was so confusing because they had one clear issue. They needed to help out the right guard position. And what they did was pretty much improved 3 positions other than the right guard position, which was a weird situation of what they did. I don't know why they did it that way. Would have liked to see them just add a right guard as well. But, this is how they did it. And maybe they just trust Jackson Carman will come in and play well. I don't know. But still plenty to like about this team. I have them as the best team in the AFC. I do. So there you go. In fact, interestingly enough, the second best team I have in the AFC is a wildcard team in the Ravens. Number 2, the Green Bay Packers. And man, the Packers and Buccaneers are so close to each other. I still don't know if I officially want to say that I had the Buccaneers winning the Super Bowl just yet because the Packers are right there. But let's talk about the Packers. They're tier 1 everything and run in the defense, but tier 1 quarterback, that's going to get you places. The top 3 teams all have tier 1 quarterbacks. The only 2 teams that don't that have a tier 1 quarterback and didn't make this section were the Chiefs and then the Browns, and the Browns won't have their tier 1 quarterback for most of it. If they did, they would actually be up here. So there you go. But for the Packers, the question is, of course, the receiving core, which is tier 5 for me. And it's not almost tier 4. It's a tier 5. It needs some work. There are some guys who could work out, but you could say that with everyone at every position. It's just there's question marks there, and that really concerns me, especially like in the playoffs when you are going to need situations. You're going to need guys to get open. That's just going to happen. You won't be able to scheme guys open against a team like the Rams. Like I don't think that's going to happen. You're going to need at least a Devontae Adams, which they don't have. So that's my concern, and that's why I probably will say that the Buccaneers I will have as winning the Super Bowl, even though, again, this Packers team is awesome. I really think so. I think this Buccaneers team is awesome. The question marks with both these two teams is, could their quarterbacks fall off because they are getting up there in age? But the Bucs have a great receiving core. You could argue it's better than the Bengals. It might have more depth, although I think I like Cincinnati's a little bit better, just because I think Jamar Chase is probably the best out of that bunch among all those guys, even though I love Mike Evans a lot as well. I still have it as a tier 1 offensive line. I know losing Jensen hurts, and I know losing Aaron Stinney hurts, but you have Luke Gadecki, who should be solid, and you have a 3rd-round pick slotting in there at center. So it's not like you're having like some, dud out there. I think they'll be okay. But yeah, coverage, very good. Hopefully it doesn't get entirely injured like it did last year. Would have liked to see them improve their pass rush a little bit, but I still think they're okay. Run defense should be fantastic. Any run defense with Vita Vea and Lavonte David is going to be fantastic. So plenty to like about this team. But yeah, that's kind of where I have them. I do have them as winning the Super Bowl. You might say I'm just a biased Tampa Bay fan. I've never done this before. I've never predicted the Buccaneers to win the Super Bowl before. I didn't have them winning it last year. I didn't have them winning it the year they won it. So, who knows what happens. But, I entered it into the algorithm, and this is how it turned out. And I think that if you watch my channel closely, you will know that I have a slight bias towards my team. Everyone's going to have a slight bias towards your team. That's just how it works out. I don't think it's a huge bias, but I do have a slight bias. Of course, it's my team. So take that with a grain of salt, if you will. But that's kind of how I view it. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.